My finger was on the trigger. I aimed straight at his chest. The whole scene moved in slow motion, rain pouring down, sirens wailing in the distance, my partner yelling something I couldn't even hear, because in that moment, nothing else made sense. The man in front of me, sweaty, armed, ready to shoot, wasn't just another criminal. It was Leo, my best friend from childhood, the kid who used to split his lunch with me at school, who crashed at my place when he ran from his drunk parents, who used to say we'd grow up and change the world together. Now he was standing there staring at me like he was still my brother, or maybe my end, and me. I didn't know whether to hold the gun or wipe away the tears. I swear, for a second, I forgot the badge, the protocol, the weapon in my hand. I could only see those eyes, the look of someone who once trusted me and was now on the other side of my aim. This wasn't just another call. This was a reckoning with my past, and no one ever trained me for that. You know those nights that start off a little too quiet, the kind that feel calm in a way that makes your gut twist? Yeah, it was one of those. Friday bleeding into Saturday, cold night, light rain tapping on the windshield of the patrol car, me behind the wheel on the graveyard shift. The kind of shift where your body goes into autopilot, strong coffee, vest tightened, radio on your shoulder, and your mind ready for anything, or so you think. I'd seen it all in that area: domestic disputes, street fights, armed robberies, overdoses, pursuits. The South Side never sleeps, and when it does, it dreams in nightmares. But that night felt off. Something inside me was wrong. Couldn't explain it. Just a tightness in my chest, like something from the past was sneaking back into the present. I ignored it. Around 2:47 a.m., the radio crackled. Attempted robbery in progress. Auto shop, 721 Linz Torres Street. Suspect still on site. Requesting immediate response. I looked at Rocha, my partner. He already had his hand on the siren. "Let's roll," he said with a grin, like it was just another routine job, and I thought it was too. Why wouldn't I? But something hit me hard when I heard that address, Linz Torres Street. It sounded too familiar. I knew that street. I had memories there. I just couldn't connect the dots. Not yet. The patrol car flew through the wet streets, sirens echoing into the night. The training kicked in. Focus, alertness, no, emotion. That's how you survive. We got there fast. The front gate of the auto shop was wide open, padlock broken. Everything was dark inside. I switched on my flashlight. Rocha took the left side for cover. I moved around the back, just like protocol says. But that place, it hit different. Scattered tools, oil stains, the heavy smell of gas and metal, but no voices, no cries for help, just the hum of the rain and the sound of my own breathing. And then footsteps, fast, running. I turned and caught a figure moving behind a pile of tires, hooded, dark clothes, armed. Everything snapped into motion. "Police! Drop the weapon!" I shouted, aiming my light straight at him, and in that split second, when my flashlight hit his face, my entire world came to a halt. He wasn't just some punk with a gun. It was Leo, my Leo, the same kid who shared a broken toy car with me, who said we'd leave that neighborhood and never look back. The same kid I hadn't seen in over a decade, and now he was here. Gun raised, eyes wide. The past had just kicked in the door and walked back into my life with a loaded weapon. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I was about to arrest a criminal or bury a piece of myself. The call came in sharp and cold, like so many others. The kind of dispatch we get dozens of times a week. The kind that barely raises your pulse anymore. "Robbery in progress, 721 Linz Torres Street, auto repair shop. Suspect still on site. Backup requested." The voice on the radio was steady, professional, but there was a tremble in it, subtle, almost unnoticeable, unless you've been doing this long enough to feel it. I looked at Rocha. He was already turning the wheel. "Let's move," he said, flicking on the lights. The patrol car growled to life, siren cutting through the stillness of the night. Inside the cabin, everything changes when you realize the suspect hasn't fled. That means danger. That means confrontation. That means somebody's about to make a decision in a split second, life or death. And no matter how trained you are, nothing makes that easier. Linz Torres Street. That name kept echoing in my head. It wasn't just familiar, it was personal. I couldn't place it right away, but something inside me knew. I'd been there before, years ago, way before the badge, before the shifts, before everything changed. We turned the final corner, and when I saw the front of the auto shop, rusted gate, and a white star spray-painted on the wall, everything came flooding back. That star. We painted it there, me and Leo. We were just kids, 12, maybe 13. That shop was our hideout. We'd sneak in through a gap in the wall, hang out among the tools and the grease. We even called it our fort. Spent afternoons dreaming about the future and vowing to never become part of that neighborhood's curse. I'd buried that memory, but now it stood right in front of me. My grip tightened on the flashlight. Rosha moved to cover the left. I gave a silent hand signal, stepped through the broken gate and entered the shop. It smelled the same, gasoline, grease, rusted iron, but now it reeked of something else too, tension, memory, regret. The place was torn up, tools scattered, shelves knocked over, signs of struggle, but no voices, no movement, and then metal clinking, a sound, fast footsteps. I turned just in time to see a figure bolt from behind a car covered by a tarp. Hoodie, dark jeans, armed. I aimed. Freeze! Police! Drop it! He didn't. He ran. Through the back exit. I followed. Rain poured through the cracks in the roof. The floor was slick. I turned a corner and froze. He was there, weapon raised, breathing hard, face hidden. I pointed my flashlight straight at him. He turned. The light caught his face, and the world stopped. It was Leo, the kid who grew up eating my leftovers, who patched up my cuts when my dad got drunk, who used to whisper, "We're gonna make it out of here." He was standing there, older, tired, and broken. He recognized me, too. "Miro," he whispered. "No way!" Everything in me locked up, my heart, my breath, my thoughts. Rosha's voice crackled through the radio. I didn't hear it. I didn't hear anything. Just the voice in my head screaming, "What the hell happened to us?" It's funny how, after everything, we start to notice the signs we ignored. Like life was shouting the whole time, and we just weren't listening. Because that night, something already felt wrong. Not in the streets, not in the dispatch, inside me. It wasn't the silence on the radio, it wasn't the calm air, it was something in my chest, a weight, a pressure, a whisper that something was coming, something personal, something I wouldn't be ready for. I felt it even before the call came in. We had stopped at a small bakery around 2 a.m. to grab a quick coffee. Rosha went inside. I stayed in the car, just staring through the windshield, watching the streetlights flicker through the misty rain. That's when I felt it, a knot in my stomach. Not fear, not nausea, a warning. I ignored it, took a sip of the bitter, burnt coffee and went back to patrol. The radio stayed silent, unusually quiet for that hour. Rosha even joked, "Think we'll actually get a calm night for once?" I forced a smile, but I didn't answer, because deep down I knew we wouldn't. Then the address came through, 721 Linz Torres Street, and just like that, my breath caught in my throat. I knew that name, that street. I couldn't remember why at first, but my body remembered, my skin remembered, my heart remembered. The closer we got, the stronger the pull. The alleyways, the narrow sidewalks, the graffiti on the corners, it all whispered to me like ghosts from another life. And then we turned the corner. There it was, the old auto shop, the sagging gate, and spray-painted on the wall beside it, half faded but still there, a white star, the symbol we painted when we were kids, me and Leo. It was our mark, our club, our bond. We swore we'd never be like our parents, never drown in alcohol or poverty or violence. We'd get out together. We even made a pact. If one of us made it out, we'd come back for the other. And now I was standing there, faking composure, gun at my side, partner on my 6. But inside, I was 13 again, holding a spray can in one hand and a dream in the other. But I pushed it all down, because there was no time for memories. We had a suspect on site. I drew my weapon, signaled to Rocha, entered the building, and the deeper I went, the heavier it felt. The tools on the floor, the smell of oil, the rain tapping through the broken panels above, the dim shadows hiding in every corner. My flashlight trembled slightly. I told myself it was the cold, but I knew better. And then I heard it. Movement, a step, then another. Quick, sharp. I followed the sound, turning the corner. A figure appeared, dark hoodie, black jeans, gun in hand. I aimed, he turned. The light hit his face, and my past stared back at me. Leo, right there. No mask, no fear, just the ghost of a kid I once called family. And that gut feeling? It had been right all along. The door to the auto shop gave way too easily, like it wanted me to come in, like it already knew this night wasn't going to end like the others. Every step inside felt heavier than the last. The echo of my boots on the wet concrete floor mixed with the steady drip of rain through holes in the roof. And yet, the silence inside was deafening. The place smelled just like it. Used to burned oil, grease, rusted steel, but now it carried something else. Tension, memory, fear. My flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. I told myself it was just the cold, but it wasn't. I knew it. My pulse was racing, my skin was buzzing. Something deep inside me was already cracking. I swept the light behind a hydraulic lift, through the scattered wrenches, over toppled tool carts. Nothing. Rocha took the left side. We moved in sync, like we'd trained for this moment 1,000 times. But this moment, it was different, it was personal. I crept past the stacked tires, each shadow feeling like it might leap to life. Then, movement. Quick, to my right. A figure darted between two shelves and ran toward the back exit. I reacted instantly. Police, stop! Drop your weapon! He didn't stop. He ran. I chased him, the sound of boots on wet concrete, my breath echoing in my ears. Rain dripping faster now, pattering like gunfire on the metal roof. And then I turned the corner and froze. He was there, hood up, shoulders tense, gun raised. I aimed my light and my weapon at his chest. He turned, and in that exact second, everything inside me shattered. Leo, not a suspect, not a stranger. Leo, the boy who slept in my room when his parents fought, who taught me how to throw a punch, who built a bike out of scrap with me and said we'd ride it out of that neighborhood one day. He was standing there, armed, breathing heavy, eyes wide. We both locked eyes. Recognition hit us at the same time. "Miro," he said, barely above a whisper. "No way!" Time stopped. The radio crackled behind me. Rocha calling for status. I couldn't answer. I couldn't even move. The world had shrunk down to this one corridor. Two boys who had grown up and were now pointing weapons at each other. My arms shook. My grip tightened. But I couldn't pull the trigger because I wasn't just looking at a suspect. I was looking at the kid who used to call me brother. He raised his weapon slightly, not in threat, almost like a reflex, like he didn't know what else to do. And for a moment I thought, this is it. Either he shoots me, or I shoot him, or we both hesitate and let fate decide. And then something small fell to the ground, a soft metallic clink. Something had slipped from his pocket, and just like that, everything began to change. I've seen a lot in this job. Lifeless bodies on the sidewalk, screams in the dark, bullets slicing through air like invisible knives. I've seen innocents die from a stray shot, seen guilty men walk free, seen kids carry dope and grown men cry when they couldn't feed their families. You learn to harden, to shove it all into a dark corner inside you and just keep going. Because if you stop, you break. And if you break, you don't come back. But nothing prepared me for this moment. The beam of my flashlight lit up his face, and for that 1 second, just a second, the world went completely still. The rain, the radio, my heart, everything froze. The face, staring back at me, wasn't just any suspect. It was Leo, not a memory, not a ghost. Leo, the same kid who climbed into my window to escape the screaming, who gave me half his lunch when I didn't have any, who said, "One day we'll laugh about all this." Now he was older, hardened, broken, but his eyes, those were still his. He recognized me too, and the anger disappeared. Just like that. It wasn't fear either, it was something deeper. Pain. "Miro," he whispered, "you became a cop." It wasn't. Just a question. It was a gut punch, like seeing me in this uniform was betrayal, like this badge on my chest meant I had chosen a side, and it wasn't his. I didn't answer right away. My hands were shaking, barely noticeable, but I felt it. I was still aiming, but I couldn't shoot. Because how do you shoot at someone who once called you family? "Drop the gun, Leo," I finally said. "Please, man, just drop it." He hesitated. His eyes flickered between the gun in his hand and my face. His mouth opened, closed, and then he said something I'll never forget. "I didn't want this, Miro, I swear. I just didn't have a choice." His voice cracked at the end, and for a second, I saw it. Not the man in front of me, not the criminal, but the kid, my brother, and that made it worse. Rosha moved in behind me. I heard the shuffle of boots. Leo heard it too. His body tensed, his weapon rose slightly. My training screamed fire, but my soul begged me to wait. In that frozen moment, we both knew one of us might die right here, not out of hatred, but because the world had failed us both, because the past had come back in the worst way possible. And then it fell, a sharp, metallic clink. Something dropped from his pocket and slid across the concrete, stopping between us. When that object hit the ground, just that small metallic sound scraping against concrete, something inside me cracked wide open. My eyes dropped instinctively. The flashlight followed. It was a chain, thin, dirty, worn, but the pendant. I knew it like I knew my own name. A scratched aluminum plate rusted around the edges, engraved with 2 letters, M and L, Miro and Leo. And suddenly, I wasn't in that auto shop anymore. I was back in the old alleyways of Villa das Palmeiras, where the dirt roads swallowed our flip-flops and the future was just a rumor. It was a Saturday. We were maybe 12. We'd spent the week collecting cans, helping unload trucks at the corner store for a few crumpled bills. We could have bought candy, a burger, a soda, but instead, we bought a chain, 2 pendants, one for me, one for him. I remember the woman at the stall laughing. "What do 2 kids want with that?" And Leo answered without hesitation, with that spark in his eye. "So we never forget we're in this together. Always." Back then we had nothing. No bedrooms, no toys, no promises, but we had each other. And that was enough. We made a pact that day. We buried half of a broken toy car in the backyard of Leo's house and swore we'd only dig it up when life got better, when we had real jobs. A backyard of our own, a dog, a grill, a family. But life didn't wait. First came the streets, then the wrong crowd, then silence. I remember the day he disappeared. I went to his place. His mom was crying, holding a note. He'd run away, said he couldn't take it anymore, that he didn't want to become just another number. And now, here he was, with that same chain still around his neck, the one he swore he'd never take off. That one thing, that old piece of metal, it undid me because it meant he remembered. He still carried it, not just on his body, in him. And I realized, no matter how far he'd fallen, some part of him had never let go. I came back to the present, to the darkness, to the smell of oil, to the eyes watching me from across the room. Leo had seen it too, the chain, the pendant. He looked down at it, then up at me, and for the first time since we locked eyes, he lowered his weapon. It wasn't surrender, it was memory, it was pain, it was guilt. Maybe he knew in that second that he'd crossed too many lines, that there was no going back. But by letting go of that gun, by letting that pendant fall, he told me everything I needed to know. Some part of Leo was still in there, still human, still broken, still mine. And me, I didn't know anymore if I was supposed to pull the trigger or fall apart right there, because this wasn't just a bust, it wasn't just a threat neutralized, it was a reunion with the piece of myself I'd tried to bury. But the past doesn't stay buried, not when it falls at your feet. still wearing the chain you swore you'd never take off. The gun was on the floor, but the weight in the air, it only got heavier. The silence between us was louder than gunfire, louder than sirens. It was the kind of silence that only two people with history can share, history soaked in promises, in pain, and in everything that was never said. Leo stepped back, slowly, hands still raised, eyes locked on mine. Then finally he spoke, low, rough, like his voice hadn't been used in years. "You really became a cop?" It wasn't just a question. It was disappointment, regret, almost betrayal, like seeing the badge on my chest meant I'd chosen them instead of us. My grip on the gun was trembling, not from fear, from heartbreak. "And what about you, Leo?" I replied. My voice came out sharper than I meant. "What did you become?" He laughed, a hollow sound, bitter, tired. "I became what I had to, what life forced me to, while you got out, you made it. Good for you, brother." The way he said brother, that word, it shattered something in me, because it wasn't sarcasm, it was truth, and it hurt. "You could have made it too, Leo. You were smarter than me, braver. We dreamed about this together, the academy, the badge." He cut me off. "We dreamed," he scoffed. "Miro, you had a home, you had a mom, a dad. I had you, and when you put on that uniform, I lost even that." I couldn't speak, because I knew, deep down, he wasn't wrong. There was a long pause, one of those moments where the whole world seems to hold its breath. Then he said, "You remember that day at school, career day? You said you'd be a cop, and I'd be your partner." Of course I remembered. That memory had kept me going for years. "Well," he said, voice breaking, "you made it. And me? I don't even know when I got lost. All I know is, after you left, no one ever called me brother again." The gun was still on the ground, the chain too. But what hung the heaviest in that room was us, the weight of what we had been and what we never became. Far off, I heard the approaching sirens. Backup was on the way. Time was running out. I had to act, arrest him, follow procedure, but I couldn't move because all I saw was a kid who once believed in me and who now stood there ruined because no one ever believed in him. "Do what you have to, Miro," he said finally. "I'm done running." And that's when it hit me like a punch to the chest. How do you arrest someone who once saved your life? How do you aim a weapon at the only person who ever held your hand when you were falling? How do you uphold the law when the criminal is the last person who ever called you family? Leo was there, head down, unarmed, nowhere to run. The chain lay on the ground between us like a broken line still connecting what we used to be. And me, I still had my gun up, still had the authority, still had the duty. But nothing about that moment felt like justice. This wasn't about laws anymore. This was about us. He had already surrendered before his knees hit the floor, not out of fear, out of exhaustion, out of defeat. The kind of defeat that comes when life knocks you down so many times, you just stop getting up. Rocha moved in close, tense, gun still raised. "So, what now, Miro?" His voice was sharp, ready. He didn't know what had just unfolded in that auto shop. He didn't know. The boy on the ground had once been my brother in everything but blood. I couldn't answer him because my mind was split. On one side, the badge, the oath, the responsibility to uphold the law. On the other, the boy who shared his last meal with me, who shielded me from my father's drunken rage, who cried when my mother died and held my hand like we were the only two left in the world. I was standing on the edge of a cliff. One step, and I'd fall into betrayal. The other, and I'd lose myself. My heart screamed, let him go. But my conscience whispered, he made his choices, and then something darker crept in. What if I pretended not to recognize him, let him run, erase the report? But that thought, it burned. Because if I did that, I'd never forgive myself. Because what he did matters, but so does who he was. He wasn't pointing a gun at me anymore. He was pointing a mirror, and I saw myself in it. I saw what I might have become if just one thing had gone differently. I heard Rocha shift. Beside me, felt the weight of the moment growing. Leo looked up, eyes raw, tired. I didn't want it to end like this, Miro, but I ain't got anything left. That's not true, I said. You're still breathing. That was all I could offer. A truth neither of us wanted, but one we both had to accept. Sirens were near now. The clock was out of time. Rocha gave me a look. You making the arrest or not? I nodded slowly, then turned back to Leo. Hands behind your back. He obeyed. No fight, no words. Just the sound of the cuffs clicking into place, like a door closing forever. And I realized that sound would echo in me for the rest of my life, because I had done my job. I had upheld the law. But in doing so, I lost my brother. The rain kept hammering the roof, loud like a warning bell. The metallic smell of the shop mixed with the fog on my face shield. My heart pounded like a war drum. Rocha was behind me now, his weapon raised, his voice sharp. What are you waiting for, Miro? Leo stood in front of me, hands slightly raised but not fully surrendering, eyes wide, bloodshot but not pleading. He wasn't resisting, he wasn't running, he was just waiting. And me? I was stuck in the space between two versions of myself, the officer and the friend. The man I had become, and the boy I used to be. I wanted to do the right thing. I needed to, but I didn't even know what that meant anymore. Rocha took a step forward, agitated. He's armed. We've got enough. Let's move. But I couldn't, because I wasn't just looking at a suspect anymore. I was looking at every second we ever shared, at the days without food, the laughter in the rain, the promises we whispered under that rusted tin roof. And then something fell. A quick, soft, metallic clink. We both looked down. It had slipped from Leo's pocket. A small plastic keychain, cracked, faded. Inside it, encased in cloudy resin, was a miniature school bus, and behind it a tiny photo. Two kids, arms around each other, smiling like nothing in the world could hurt them. Me and him. That day, career day. I was dressed as a cop. He was a firefighter. We held handmade signs that read, "We'll protect the world together." I felt my knees weaken. I picked it up slowly, the tiny chain dangling between my fingers like it weighed 100 pounds. You still carry this? I asked, barely able to speak. He nodded, almost ashamed. It's the only thing I never lost. The only thing that still felt real. His voice cracked. You think I wanted this life? I tried, Miro, I swear I tried. But I slipped once, and when I looked up, no one was there. Rocha stepped closer. I raised a hand to stop him, then turned back to Leo. I looked at the photo again, at the innocence in our eyes, at the hope, at the loyalty, and I realized he never let go of us. Even when everything else was taken from him, even when the streets swallowed him, he still held on to that moment, to me. Why'd you keep it? I asked. To remember what I could have been if I'd had what you had. Those words buried themselves in my chest. This wasn't just a takedown. This wasn't just an arrest. It was the moment fate circled back and reminded me that sometimes the people we swore we'd save are the ones we never reached in time. The keychain was still in my hand, small, light, but heavier than the gun I'd carried for years. That faded photo trapped inside cloudy plastic wasn't just a childhood memento. It was proof. Proof that the past had never really left either of us. Proof that we had never fully disappeared. That smile, that spark, that hope. It wasn't dead, just buried. I stared at it like it held a question I didn't know how to answer. Rocha was still at my side, shifting uncomfortably, eyeing me like I'd lost my edge. But I didn't care. He hadn't lived what I was living in that moment. Leo watched me silently. No aggression, no fear, just shame. Real, human shame. You remember what you said that day? He asked quietly. I stayed silent. You said we'd grow up and protect people together. You said no matter what, we'd always have each other. My throat closed because I had said that. And somewhere along the way, I'd broken that promise. He looked down at the floor, his voice barely audible now. I tried to be strong, Miro, I did, but everything kept slipping and I didn't know how to hold on anymore. Rocha nudged me, tense. We need to move. This guy's wasting time. But I didn't move, because this wasn't about time anymore. This was about what was left of the two boys in that photo. I looked back at the keychain, and I remembered something else. That same day at the school event, Leo said something I'll never forget. If we both make it, let's buy a house next to each other, and if I get lost, come find me. Those words hit harder than anything else that night, because I realized he had been calling out for years, and maybe no one ever heard him until now. You still carried this, I said, lifting the keychain slightly. All this time? He nodded, eyes full but not breaking. It was the last piece of who I was. I wanted to say something, anything, but what could I say? That it wasn't his fault? That he still had a chance? That I failed him too? All of it would have been true, and all of it too late. But this much was clear. He didn't drop that weapon for protocol. He didn't surrender because I was a cop. He let go because the chain in his pocket reminded him that we were still connected. Not by law, not by blood, by something stronger, by the past. And maybe, just maybe, by the chance of one last act of redemption. And for the first time that night I knew this wasn't going to be about the arrest. It was going to be about how I did it, and what I carried with me when it was over. Leo looked at me, really looked, and in that silence between us, no sirens, no commands, no threats, I knew. He'd already surrendered before the gun ever hit the ground. It wasn't the kind of surrender you see in movies. No dramatic kneel, no last-minute speech. It was deeper, more human, a quiet collapse from someone who'd finally accepted that there was no more road ahead. He dropped to his knees slowly, not in defiance, not in fear, in exhaustion. His eyes were still locked on mine, no hatred, no bitterness, just sadness, a soft kind that eats away at you from the inside out. His breathing got heavier, his hands stayed raised. I stepped forward, not like a cop making a takedown, more like a friend, approaching someone who'd been missing for years. Rosha stood nearby, still tense, gun ready. "It's under control," I said quietly but firmly. "Lower your weapon." He hesitated but obeyed. As I slipped the cuffs around Leo's wrists, I felt how cold his skin was. He was shaking, not violently, but in that deep, quiet way only someone truly broken trembles. There was no resistance, no questions, no fight. Just a man, empty. When I finished, he looked up at me. "I'm sorry, brother," he whispered. "I tried to stay strong. I really did, but I failed. It took everything in me not to look away, not to let my own tears show." "You didn't fail," I said. "You're still here." He nodded slowly. A tear fell. The first, maybe the only one he'd let out in years. And it wasn't for the crime. It wasn't for getting caught. It was for everything else, for every promise broken, for every version of himself that never got to exist. I helped him to his feet, carefully. The chain and the keychain were still. On the ground, I picked them up, not as evidence, as memory. We walked out of that shop without a word. The rain had calmed to a drizzle. The street was still. The world had moved on. But something in me hadn't. At the precinct, we booked him by the book. No shortcuts, no special treatment. He didn't speak again, didn't argue, didn't defend himself, just followed. Like a man who finally knew where the road ended. I filed the report, kept it simple, factual, but I left out the most important parts. The chain, the keychain, the photo, the story. Because that part, that was mine, that was ours. When I got home, the sky was already turning. I undressed in silence, sat on the edge of the bed, laid the keychain on the nightstand, and just stared. 2 kids, 1 dream. Now, one in cuffs, the other with a badge and a broken heart. I did my job. I followed the law, but I didn't win, because sometimes doing the right thing still leaves you shattered. The patrol car rolled slowly through the wet street. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky was beginning to turn that pale shade of gray that comes before dawn. The world outside was still sleeping. Inside the car, silence. Leo didn't say a word. He just stared out the window like he wasn't really there anymore. like he was watching the movie of a life that no longer belonged to him. Rosha sat in the front seat, eyes on the road, hands gripping the wheel tighter than usual. I knew he had questions. I also knew he wasn't going to ask them. Not yet. We arrived at the precinct at 4:19 a.m. Less than 2 hours had passed since the call, but to me, it felt like a lifetime. I escorted Leo to holding. He followed every step. Calm, silent, hollow. There was no outburst, no resistance. Just a man at the end of his story. I handed over the paperwork, stuck to the facts. Armed suspect, auto shop break-in, no shots fired. Subject surrendered. But I didn't write about the chain, or the keychain, or the boy who once swore we'd make it. Out together. Those parts didn't fit on any line of the report. They lived elsewhere, between the cracks in the badge and the heart behind it. I left the station just after sunrise, put my gear away, drove home in silence. I don't remember the drive, just the sound of the rain easing off, and the emptiness in my chest growing louder. At home, I stripped off the uniform piece by piece, slow, heavy, like peeling off a second skin that had fused to my soul. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the keychain from my pocket, set it on the nightstand, stared at it. 2 boys, smiling, frozen in time, a plastic window keeping that innocence intact, long after the world had broken everything else. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. All I know is that night taught me something I'll never forget. Justice and peace aren't the same thing. I did my duty. I upheld the law. But I also lost something I'll never get back. Because when the suspect turns out to be your best friend from childhood, your hands may stay clean, but your soul, it never will. They say the badge protects you, that it gives you power, authority, control. They tell you that once you put on the uniform, you become part of something greater. But no one ever talks about what the badge doesn't cover. Your heart. That night taught me something no academy, no manual, no field training ever could. The real weight of the uniform isn't the gear. It's not the gun. It's not the responsibility to act. It's when the law stands face to face with your past. Because in that dark shop, surrounded by rain and rusted tools, I didn't just find a suspect. I found a piece of myself. A memory I thought I had buried so deep it would never come back. But it did, with eyes full of regret and hands that used to build dreams next to mine. Leo made mistakes. He'll pay for them. That's justice. But what still tears at me is knowing, deep down, that he wasn't born to lose. He just didn't get the same chances. He slipped and no one caught him, not even me. And maybe that's what hurts the most, knowing that somewhere along the line I stopped reaching back. While I climbed, he fell. While I served, he disappeared. I became the man we dreamed of being. He became the man we swore we'd never turn into. But he never forgot. He carried that keychain all these years, not just in his pocket, but in his soul. And that little piece of plastic said more than any report ever could. It told me he remembered, that he tried, that part of him was still in there, fighting to hold on to who we were. And that's what I think about now. Not the arrest, not the statement I filed, but the boy who stood beside me in that photo, and the man who cried in silence as the cuffs closed around his wrists. They were the same person, and that's why justice can't be just punishment. It has to be understanding, compassion, memory. Because out there, the streets don't just create criminals, they bury kids like Leo. And the ones who survive, we carry the funerals inside us. So no, I don't see things in black and white anymore. I see names, I see faces, I see choices that were never really choices. And I know now, sometimes the line between the hero and the accused is nothing more than a childhood photo, sealed in a keychain, forgotten in the bottom of a pocket. Subscribe to the channel now if you want to hear more emotional real-life stories from police officers. And drop a comment below. Which part of this story hit you the hardest? It could be a memory, a dilemma, a single line, anything. I read every single comment, And I promise you, it's in your voices that this mission continues. I'll see you in the next episode.